Welcome to part 16 of our multi-language adventure game. Today we're going to write the location class, and in the game add some locations. So what do I mean by locations? Well, these are the areas that you can go into as a player and explore, find things, detect enemies, pick up things, and so on. So this is quite an important class, and it's also the most complex so far. So let's get on with the location class and show you how that works. So as with the items class, this is a full dynamic class, so we're creating locations from it. The constructor here, we're passing obviously self, and then we've got the name of the location, so it might be hotel room. Then you've got a description of that location, and then we've got the key to whatever room or location is to the north, east, south and west. So if, for example, to the east we have a corridor, then to east would be, in the string here, will be corridor. So that we know that we've got an exit to the east. The items is a list of items that are within that location. The item required is a string to give the key of any item that might be required to get into that location. For example, a key, or we might need some kind of other item like a rock or something to get you into there, and also a string for an enemy. Now we're not doing enemies just yet, but by providing it here again we can give the key of any enemy that is present inside this location. So those are the properties of the location. Here we are passing, this is the parameter list. Here we are creating the actual properties using the underscore convention as before, underscore name, etc. And we're using the decorator type properties so that we've got the name. We're not actually doing a display name. Let me get rid of that. Description to north, east, south, west, which we're just getting them. Are we setting anything? Just the items, item required, the enemy. So those are the getters and setters up there. And then we've got some methods here, which is to add an item to the sort of inventory of what's in this location, so that if you, as the player, pick up, or you in your possession you have a rock and you drop the rock, then you would add it to this list here, the self.items list, so that the list increased by whatever is that you've just dropped. Then we've got a built-in method of displaying what's inside this location. We'll go through this in detail when we step through it, but it basically checks what's to the what exits, if any, you've got in your current location, and then it describes any items that are in the room and any enemies. So that's how the location class is structured. So that's the end of the class, in case you're using this to type it out rather than downloading from the GitHub repository. So that's the items location. Now main, I don't think there's anything much new here. I think this is all the same as it was before. Yep, main hasn't changed. Game, obviously we've got some new stuff in here. So we had previously the default create default items. So we've now got the create default locations, which is our new method here. And that, similar to the items, uses a add to locations one up here. So again, we dealt with add to items last time. We're not doing add to enemies just yet. So this has now been populated, the add to locations. Weapons we'll be dealing with in future. And also we've got this check locations here, which I'll go through in a minute to see what it does. So getting the locations out is fairly complex. It's kind of the base of the whole game, so it is important that it's done properly. The intro text we've already done. Not doing any of that just yet. Load game has now been altered. Modify player hasn't, that's still there. So what we've done in the load game is we already had player characters, we already had create default items. And I've now got create default locations, but you'll notice I've used an if. The reason for doing that is later on we'll be reading these contents in from a file, and it's just possible that if the file wasn't written properly or some error in it, that it wouldn't successfully load, and therefore we're checking, is the create default locations okay? If it is, then we set where we're going and get on with the game. If it doesn't, then it returns success, which will either be true or false, depending on whether it works or not. So that's a thought we haven't got. Yes, that will either be. I'm just thinking we should perhaps give success a default value. Yeah, let's do that just to be on the safe side. So if we give it a default value of false, then if this succeeds, it will be true. Otherwise, it will return false. So that's just a minor little change there. Save that. Then I don't think there's any changes in any of the other files. No, that's okay. Right, so let's get this started and we'll step into it. Let me just, before we do that, let me just show you what it actually does. So we're running from main. So as before, we've got the choice of whether we want the debug mode on. We don't want to disable it because that's actually what we're displaying the locations at the moment. We're not actually moving anywhere just yet. So this is what we had before. This shows us the items that are created, and now you'll see the locations that are created. So here they are. This is in debug mode, so it's actually printing out a list of all the different locations. So we've got a hotel room. The description is a damp hotel room. Then we've got north nothing, east is a corridor, south nothing, west. In item required is a key card to get into it, and then the items in the room is a torch and a book. So the same thing with these other four. So we've just got the four locations: the hotel room, the corridor, lift, and reception. Reception needs a key to get in. There's no items in those two. There's a key card and a sword. I've just realised we're not doing enemies just yet. So anyway, we'll see how that runs. A torch and a book, and then we press enter to continue. And then the adventure goes on as it did before. So we'll cut it at that point and we'll show you how this now works. So let's go into game. I'm just going to check those default items. Increase that. Now we had a key card, torch, book and key. There was no sword in there. I think that's an error on my part. Let me just check when we go back to the create default locations. Ah yes, here we are, look. This one here, if I just increase the font, we're in our hotel room, we're adding a torch and a book, and then the key card is required to get into the hotel room. In the corridor, I've got down here a key card, which of course is in the corridor, so you'd have to pick that up in order to get back in to your hotel room. And then I've mistakenly put this sword here, which isn't actually at the moment an item. So let's give it What else can we've got? We've got torch and book there. The key. Yeah, I think for the moment what we'll do is I'll just put the key instead of the sword. Let's put the key in. So we've made use of the 4 items that we created. So we've key card, torch, book and key. So we've got torch and book in the hotel room, key card and key in the corridor. The reason for the slight confusion is later on in the game we use the sword to kill an enemy, and the enemy has the key within it. So as we've not got to that point just yet, let's just drop the key in the ground here so that we can use it. And then for the reception we need to use the key to get in. So that's how this works. Check locations. Right, okay, we're ready to go. Let's load the game. So we'll press the start button and we'll get to this point here. So save, main and start. There we go. So debug is on. Do we want to disable debug? No, we don't. Then we've got the items. So we've got the key card, torch, book and key. Press continue. And now we're going to create the default locations. So let's F11 into that. So we're now creating our first location, which is a hotel room. So this will be the key for the dictionary. And then the description is a damp hotel room. Then to the north, nothing. To the east, corridor. To the south, nothing. And to the west, nothing. The items in here is a torch and a book, and in order to get into this room we need the key card. So that will pass now to the add to locations function. So let's press that. So it's gone to the add to locations. As you can see, we've got the key name, which is hotel room, description, a damp hotel room, to north, nothing, to east, corridor, to south, nothing, to west, nothing. Items, torch and book, item required, key card, enemy, nothing. So that's the list of parameters that we're going to pass. And then as with the items, we're now using a shared locations dictionary, and we're going to update it with the key name here, which of course is hotel room, and then a new object of type location.location. So this is very similar to the way that the items were produced, and these are the parameters that we're passing to that constructor. So let's hit the F11 and we'll go into the location class. Right, so we're in the location class now, and so we're just going to give the internal properties their values. So I'll just press F11 to go through them. Now what I've done here is I've used the strip function to remove any leading or trailing spaces. Again, this is for when we are dealing with reading this in from a file. It's just to make sure that it's clean. So the all these functions now, self.name is hotel room, description, a damp hotel room, to north, nothing, to east, corridor, to south, nothing, to west, nothing. Items, torch and book, item required, key card, enemy, well, it hasn't been set yet, but it's nothing. So the constructor has worked. We've now got that first location done. So the others work similarly, in that it will now produce 4 locations, and the important one, I'll just go down to here if we press the green one. So we've put all these locations in, and then the current location, which is again in the shared class, just increase the, so we've got this locations dictionary, and then the current location, which is a string, is now what we're going to set it to hotel room. So that's the starting point for out of the 4 locations that we have created. I've put the starting point, the current location, at hotel room. This little check locations is now going to check that all of those are correct. So we'll step into that. So the way this works is that we are creating two empty lists, one called keys and one called wrong keys. So we'll produce those and a default return value of true. And the first thing we're going to do is to append to the keys collection for each of the shared locations keys, so that we've got a dictionary and we want a list of the keys that are in that dictionary. There may be some Pythonic way of getting those keys straight out as a list, but I've done it this way just to keep it compatible with the other languages that we're using, so that we're just looping through the keys in our dictionary and appending it to a list. So don't go shouting in the comments and saying, oh, you can do this. Yeah, I know probably you can, but this is, if you remember, we're trying to compare and contrast three languages. So we're doing it in as basic a way as possible. It's not necessarily the most efficient. So we'll step through those. So I'm appending initially, K is hotel room. Then we're appending corridor. Then we're appending lift, and so on. So that, if I step through all of those, and then the keys has now got the four keys of our locations: hotel room, corridor, lift, and reception. If the shared current location is not been set, it'll send you this warning that the current location has not been set, and then return false. So this will stop the game from running because you don't know where you are. It hasn't been set. Again, more important when we're reading it in from a file. If you're writing your own file to run the game, if you don't set where its starting location is, it's going to error out. Next thing to check out is whether we've spelt the keys and everything correctly. So have we got if the current location is not in the keys, so our keys are hotel room, corridor, lift, and reception. If the shared current location, which is hotel room, is not in the keys, then an error will come up. The current location key has been set to whatever it was, and its available keys are the list of keys, and then return false. So you'll get a message showing up, okay, you've asked to be in luxurious baths, and luxurious baths doesn't exist, therefore error, you can't run. So that's to kind of check that. Next thing is to go through each of the locations in our dictionary and check whether if a location has been set, for example, to north is empty, so we don't bother to check that one. But if it's been set to something, let's say we've set this one to luxurious bathroom, and then we look in the location to north. If it's not in the keys, as the example here, look, room spelt with an E is not in keys because we've misspelt room, or it just doesn't exist. So again, this is kind of error checking to make sure that the strings that have been used to the north, south, east, and west for each location are actually in the list of locations. So let's step through those. So location to north, it is an empty string, so it's going to ignore that. Now the location to east is, of course, corridor. I don't know if it'll show up here. No, it just says property, not that useful. F11. So the location to east is that's Python for you. I can't get the actual location here. We'll see it in C#. It will actually tell you what the east location is, but I know that it's corridor. So if it's not in the keys, whatever we picked out from there, then it would add that to the wrong keys list. But as it was in there, it's not being appended. So we're not. If we had the wrong key listed, again, it's going to store a list of anything that's got the wrong key in it. So if we go through this, yeah, this was tedious. Let's go back. So let's go down this far. Press that. Right, so the wrong keys is empty string. So we've got no wrong keys. Everything is correct. So we're checking if the length of the wrong keys is greater than 0, then it's going to tell us where errors found when creating the default game. It'll give us the available keys, and then it'll give us the wrong key names here. And then it will return false. I suppose I could have just... yeah, I could have just put return false there, couldn't I? Yeah, why not? Yeah, let's do that. So we'll put... no, I didn't want to do return false because I wanted to have this input in order to allow you to see the wrong keys. Then the return value is set to false. Then you press input from there. Then, of course, the thing will close off. If I put return false here, you'd never see the input enter to continue. So that's why it's been done that way round. So we know that there's no wrong keys. So let's press F11. Now, is shared debug on? True. So we're going to now print out that list that you saw earlier. So I've used this default width of 112 because that just happens to fit a full console at high resolution, at high font setting across this full HD screen. So this is purely for the demonstration purposes. So that's going to set the width to 112, and then we're going to resize the console to that. So if I just show you what it is at the moment, there it is. So resize the console and clear it. So we can now show you the console. There it is, full width of the screen. And then we're going to print the dictionary contains the following data plus this single line across the screen. So if I press F11 and F11 again, show you the console. That shows you what we're seeing so far. And then for each of the shared locations. Now this, as I was saying with the items class, this is using the items part of Python. When you have a dictionary, you've got the locations.items, sorry, the dictionary.items and the dictionary.values. So for key value in the items, that's getting the entire item that's inside that dictionary of shared locations. I can't unfortunately show you because unlike C# where you can kind of go down the stack trace to see what's actually in each object, all you get is the memory location of the object, which is not that helpful. I don't think it's even in stat data. Let me just check. Wrong keys, reception, not really, no. No worries. So we're now going to print out the key using a left justifier 22 spaces, followed by a single upright UTF-8 bar description, and then the value of, see, we've got key value. So let's press F11. So if I hover over key is hotel room, and the value is the object, which, as I say, because it's Python, we can't drill down into what that object actually has, but you'll see it in the C# and I think even in the Lua version you'll see what's actually in that object. But value description, no, it just says property, so not terribly helpful. So let's press F11 there, and that will return the description, and let's see what we've got. So at the moment we've got the key, hotel room, the bar description, a damp hotel room. So far so good. This time we're going to print what's to the north, east, south and west, using the left justifier to put them in the same place, and then the value to the north, value to the east, and so on. So again, I can't show you that because Python doesn't let me, so we'll just have to press F11. Okay, and that should have added that next line. So there we are. We've got north, nothing, east corridor, south, nothing, west, nothing. Next thing we do is the item required and any items that are in the room. So let's press F11. There's the item required coming back, and those are the items coming back. There we go. So the item required is the key card, and the items are a torch and a book. Then the final line is just this straight line run across, and then it will go to input, enter to continue. So let's, well, of course it will go to the next. I think we're doing the second object now. Let's just share. Yeah, so we're moving on to the second object. So no point in me stepping through all of those. Let's go to here and just let it run. Okay, so we've printed out everything in here, and that's how we get this debug screen to show you all the items, all the locations that you have created. Press enter to continue, then the game continues from there. Now at the moment it doesn't actually do anything with those locations and items. This is just how we're creating them. So let me just finish that off. It'll show me, as before, the player properties, and then enter to continue. Yeah, come on. And thank you for playing. So it's still not actually doing anything, but at least we've now created some locations. So as before, the code is on the GitHub page if you didn't want to kind of step through it. In case you do, let me just go back through everything just so that you don't miss anything. So there are no changes in the library files, console and keyboard. Game, let me start at the top. So we've added to the add to locations. We've also import location, so you've now got shared player item location and narrator up here. Then we've got this add to locations, which has now been populated. Then we've got this new function check locations. So I'll just pause it on there. That's down to line 53. And that's line 54 down to the end of the function there. Then we've got, that was already done. Then we've got the create default locations. So we've got those bits there. As you saw, I changed this here to key. That will become significant when we move on to the next stage where we actually introduce the game loop so that we can start doing stuff in the game. So we're getting closer. Load game has changed slightly, that we've now got a success equals false, and then if create default locations, if that succeeds, then the success is set to true. If it's set to true, we display the introduction. Otherwise, we return false back to the load game, and the game quits because we've made mistakes. So that's the game file there. Main hasn't changed. Shared, I don't think that's changed, apart from the list of this was like examples that you could put in here. So yep, that's the code for the Python version of our adventure game. So we're still not actually doing anything, but at least we're learning how to create the locations and create the items. So that's all for the moment.